Okay, tonight's video is on cell structures, functions, and transport. And we're going to start out by looking at an animal cell. And it's composed of a cell membrane. Inside of that, we've got cytoplasm, the nucleus, nucleolus, and we're going to just start off with those to begin. So for the nucleus, it's the control center of your cell. It holds the DNA, and it's composed of a nucleolus, and that's a dark spot at the center. So when we stain the plant cells, you saw the nucleus, and a lot of times you saw the nucleolus inside of that. And its main function for the nucleolus is to make ribosomes. So it makes ribosomes. The nucleus is also surrounded by the nuclear membrane, so there's going to be a separate membrane around the nucleus, and that's how it's able to hold the DNA in. So the new thing that we added was the ribosomes. Ribosomes and endoplasmic reticulum and smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So there's the rough and smooth. The endoplasmic reticulum is like the roads of your city, and it's going to help to transport materials throughout the cell. So the rough ER's got ribosomes all over it. And ribosomes, again, they make proteins. So the rough ER's got the proteins studded all along the outside, and they can just dump proteins into the ER, and then those proteins can then be shipped other places in the cell wherever they need to go. And then the smooth ER is just like the rough ER. You know, it's used for transport, but the difference is it doesn't have ribosomes on the outside. So it's good for making fats or lipids and membranes for the cell. Okay, so now we're going to look at the Golgi. You could call it the Golgi complex, Golgi apparatus, Golgi bodies. They're basically like the FedEx of the cell. They package, modify, and transport materials to send to different locations inside and outside of the cell. If you're looking at a diagram of the cell, they're the ones that would kind of look like a stack of pancakes. And our lysosome, this arrow is off right now. It should be pointing to one of the circular structures within the cell. So not a ribosome, but just a circular open space. These look like centrioles to me, so that's wrong. Circular but bigger than the ribosome, so a large circular structure in the cell. They're like the cleanup crew or the recycling plant of the cell. They break down food into particles the rest of the cell can use and destroy old cells. They break down old parts so that they can be used in the cell. Now we'll look at mitochondria. They're like the powerhouse of the cell. Therefore making small usable energy units, so they help release energy from foods. They break down food and they make ATP, and ATP is like a little battery that can be used within the cell for energy. So we've talked about active transport, and that's a process where you've got to use energy to move materials across a membrane. Active transport would require ATP. And so that's going to be it's going to be made in the mitochondria and then used for things like active transport. This is what a mitochondria would look like. You can go ahead and sketch this to have an idea of the mitochondria. It looks like a jelly bean, and then it's got the matrix, the internal area, and then the flattened folds are called cristae. So the matrix and the cristae are two important parts of the mitochondria. It has a lot of folds inside. This creates a lot of surface area so that you can have a lot of reactions going on across this internal membrane. More surface area you have, the more area you've got to do reactions across inside. So that was all. So all those structures would be found in both plants and animals. Now let's look at things that you'd only find in a plant. First one, so there is a vacuole, a small vacuole in an animal cell, but a plant's got a large central vacuole. So let's look at that. It would be a storage place for water and nutrients in the cell. This is what makes lettuce crisp. If there's no water source for the plant, it's going to wilt. Now let's look at chloroplast. They're what allow the plant to trap energy to make sugar, made food for the plant. They're green in color because of chlorophyll, which is a green pigment. There's some other pigments that are in plant leaves that you usually don't get to see unless the plant changes colors for the winter. So as the leaf dies, it'll go from green, and then there's maybe yellows and reds. Those are other pigments that are in the plant leaf. And then you can diagram this as well. So you have a diagram now of your mitochondria. You have a diagram of the chloroplast. So chloroplast is made up of the stroma. That's the internal area of the chloroplast. And the membrane that surrounds is the thylakoid membrane. So that's around the stacks of the inside. And the stacks are called grana. So internal area is called stroma, flattened stacks called grana, and the membrane that surrounds those stacks is called the thylakoid membrane. And we've got the cell wall. So it provides support and protection to the cell membrane. It's found outside of the cell membrane in plant cells. So plants don't have an internal skeleton. It's their cell wall that's going to give them support. That's what allows them to grow up really tall. So that's the same for a tree. So a redwood doesn't have an internal skeleton. It's just got cell wall all throughout the tree. As well as like the plants in the room, they just have cell walls, allows them to grow up tall. Okay, what I'd like you to do, so this is the only thing I'm going to check. I'm going to check that you have nicely written notes. But what I'd like to see is I'd like you to do a comparison. So over here, these are things that only a plant has. Think of the last section of notes where you just wrote down things that a plant has. This is for things that they both have. And then see if you can come up with something that is only in an animal cell. I didn't specify that in the video, but see if you can look that up. And then really quick, I'm going to go through just the levels of organization. So cells, a structural unit of all living things, smallest unit classified as, so you could have a one-celled living organism. That's kind of like the basic part of cell theory. That's one of the first part of cell theory. If you add cells together, they start working together to perform different functions. So I've got a bunch of images of different internal body cells. So you've got bone cells over here, and then you've got cartilage cells, so supporting in between, making up joints that bones can glide upon. This is fat tissue, skin cells, intestinal villi. So you basically have these little finger-like projections in your intestine that help you absorb nutrients, and that's what those look like. Nerve tissue, heart muscle, and skeletal muscle. And then finally, so you might have tissues that work together. So organs are groups of tissues that perform different functions. There are many organs. Skin is one organ, kidney, liver, eye, those other examples of organs. So you're getting a really specified function out of all these groups of tissues working together, and groups of tissues with specialized cells. So those are your levels of organs: cell, tissue, organ. And then organs would eventually go together to form systems, but we're not going to get into that. But if you know cell, tissue, and organ, that would be good. Okay, have a good night.